Brother Teacher here. I'm going to apologize in advance, but I'm really not apologizing. I'm just saying it because it sounds good to some people, and some people might just simply want that as a comfort in general. But what I'm about to say is actually the truth. As virtually everything I say to you, I would hope it's the truth because it's based on sound understanding, knowledge, and critical thinking, logic, and science. And that's the only way I operate. So, this is about children being rewarded regardless of their behavior. I apologize for the hat, but I turned the heat off in the facility and it's a little cold. I'm about to leave, but I'm going to do this video before I go, and I just wanted to touch on this for a moment. And I want to say this, that for all of you that are parents, and I'm a parent, and I have grown children as well, it is perhaps the greatest job that a human being can ever have on planet Earth is that of a parent, because you are responsible for another human being's mind. In other words, you are responsible for the direction in which that human being is going to grow, the direction in which they're going to develop by virtue of what you give them and what you don't give them. Should I say that again? Your children are the product of what you give them and what you don't give them. So, I will say this as sort of a disclaimer for those of you that don't have control of your situation, or your control is very limited. I understand that there are and have been extenuating situations with people over the years, even before I was ever born. Extenuating situations such as the mother or father may have been addicted to drugs, alcohol, or what have you. They may have had some sort of physical malady that did not allow them to raise their children, and someone else had to raise the children instead. Could have been the other family member, such as the father if it was the mother who had the problem, or vice versa, or it could have been a grandparent, an aunt or uncle, maybe even an older sibling. But whatever the case was, that child is still being reared by another human being. So whoever you are and wherever you are, if you are indeed a parent, have been, and if you currently are a parent, write these things on your thumb. Your child is not actually your property. That is another human being that is impressionable. Now, your responsibility as a parent is not to make that child happy with physical, materialistic things. You may not like this, I don't care, but it's not. Those things are temporary, and they're just simply part of life. And as we travel through life, we will see those things, because there's nothing physical, nothing materialistic that we can ever take to our graves with us. Not a thing. So if you were to take every physical gift, every materialistic thing that you accumulate in your life, if you were to take it away, what do you have left? You have you. Cell phones are always manufactured, and televisions, video devices such as PlayStations, and I don't think they use GameCube too much anymore, but Xbox and so forth. All of these different types of platforms, to include YouTube and so on and so forth. These things that seem to capture children's attention, to include the latest clothing lines and Nike gym shoes and things of this nature, and being able to go to amusement parks and to the show and so forth. All of this thing, all of these things are okay in their proper place. You must learn to keep things in perspective. The most important lessons that you can give to your children is to teach them how to have self-respect, how to love themselves. And if they love themselves, then they can love everyone without. In other words, everyone outside of them. You can't thoroughly treat your fellow human beings with any dignity and respect if you don't treat yourself that way in the first place. So you must teach them how to have a sense of self-worth, that they are valuable, that they are important. I don't know about your religious beliefs and or choices. Give them a sense of there being something greater than them spiritually. I know there are many, many religions out here. Religions are made by men. Spirituality, I think, supersedes anything that's created by men. You must have your own personal relationship with God. If a child decides somewhere down the road that they don't want to follow your particular belief system, let's say you're Jehovah's Witness and they want to be Baptist, allow them that space. If you're a Catholic and they want to be a Muslim, let them have their space. I understand as long as they are in your home, if that's what you believe in and that's your conviction, you carry them through that. But your mind as a parent should always be open to the fact that that's another mind that is not yours. Because I've seen many children, as they have gotten older, they end up being stuck and or confused because they don't know really what direction to go, because they've been forced to believe something that was just simply passed down to them and they never questioned it. And they end up reaping bad results down the road. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It means that the only thing that you can share with your children is that which you were given as a child. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that you was given was correct, that it was right, that it was moral, but it's the only thing that you have. So if that's all you have to share with your child, to give to your child, so be it. But you must allow the child to be independent. You must allow the child to be an individual. You must allow the child the ability to think for his and her self. You cannot monopolize their own mind. Now, beating a child. When you beat your child, the scripture says, spare not the rod. And it also goes to say that if you were to whip your children or beat the child, beat doesn't mean, with bruises and killing the child, of course. It says you can't kill them. So I do believe in capital punishment, spanking your children when it's appropriate, with self-control. I also believe that you should talk to your children and explain everything about what your decisions are as it relates to their lives. You don't just whip a child because they made you upset. You must explain to them the rules of the house, the rules of life, and say, here's the foundation, here's the principles, this is what you're doing, and this is the reason why you're doing it. And then you go from there. When my older children were young, I would always explain to them, don't do this because of this reason. And that's the end of it. And I would have them to repeat it to me. What did Daddy say not to do? And they would repeat it. And I say, what's going to happen if you go against that rule? You're going to spank me. Absolutely. But the conversation was the most important thing. It was integral. You have a conversation with your children. You look them dead in the eyes and you make them responsible. You make them accountable. You do this when they're really small. Not beating up on them from the standpoint of an emotional situation where you make them feel inferior to you. They're supposed to reverence you as their parent. They're not supposed to be terrified of you as their parent. Kind of like the relationship we have with God, the Almighty. We're supposed to reverence God. We're not supposed to walk around trembling because there's a God. He doesn't intend it to be that way. He wants us to reverence Him and respect Him for the position that He has. parents should be seen the same way through the eyes of the children, not terrified of their parents. Now, I know I said a lot, but I'm going to get to this point here. I know people, single mothers specifically, no matter what their children do, they don't have rules, solid rules, ground rules in their home. So the children are just all over the place. And so oftentimes this is because they were taught to just pacify the child. If the child is becoming unruly in the house, hand them a cell phone. Tell them to turn the television on. Send them outside to play. Give them something to do that's not really educational, just to get them out of your way and to leave you alone so you don't have to deal with them. This is counterproductive. You don't want to do that. You want to have conversations, like I said earlier, with your children. You want to take some time out of your life, your so-called busy schedule. God forbid you're not working. If you're not working a job, you need to be on the job of raising your children. So take some time out of your life and sit down and read a book with your child. Take some time, sit down and have a conversation, a real life conversation with your child, with your children. And you tell them about life. Tell them what you expect out of them. Tell them what the ramifications are if they don't follow certain rules in life. What the outcome could potentially be. That's what you give your children. I talked about a sense of individuality and being independent. You want to teach them to be able to stand alone and not always be holding on to your apron string. They're going to always love mom. It seems like children cling a little bit more to mother than they do father. But be that as it may, no matter how much they cling to you, sometimes you have to push them away and allow them to be independent. Allow them to be an individual and not just always up under you. Because when you do that, what's going to happen? One day, God forbid, something happened to you and you're no longer around. That child has been taught dependency on you only. Once they're separated from you, they're going to have anxiety, frustration, and even hate for the fact that you're no longer there, because you have never allowed them to be separated from you, even within the home. I'm not telling you, I'm not encouraging you not to love your children, because you should. But loving your children is giving them the tools that they need to grow and to develop as young men and young women. And you start this as a child. You don't wait till your children become preteens and young adults to start teaching them about life. It's too late. Their crucial years are from the ages of 6 months to approximately 7 years old. That's their developmental years. And those are the years that they have assumed an identity and they know who they are. You can't wait beyond that point, because it's too late to try to bring them back. As the scripture says, raise up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old they won't depart from it. This is true. Teach your children responsibility while they are children, young children. Teach them how to clean up behind themselves, how to do proper hygiene of their own bodies, how to maintain a home, how to tie their shoes, put their clothing on, how to manage things within the home, how to keep their rooms clean and their clothes organized, how to even cook when they're old enough to turn the stove on and so forth. These are the things that are going to be valuable to those children when they become adults. You actually are teaching your children to become adults when they are children, regardless of what anyone thinks. That's what you're doing, because you're only a child once. It's just a process, but you are an adult for the rest of your life. You never go back to childhood. So now, if your child is in school, for example, and you get a phone call saying that your child was talking back to a teacher or a staff member and they cursed them out. How much time do they spend in school versus home? They spend the majority of time in the home with you, the parents. That child got it from you. They got it from a family member. Because your children are the spitting image. They are the reflection of you and the training and teaching that you give them in the home. That's the real educational institute, the home. When that child goes to any public place, they should be representative of you, the parent. It's not to say that they won't be silly. It's not to say they won't get into a little melee every once in a while with another child or someone. It doesn't mean that they won't do something outlandish and out of the way. But if you give them the proper structure and teaching, the instruction, they will usually come right back around to the teachings that you have given them, if you've given it to them. So the same is true conversely. If you're not giving them anything of value, why would you expect something of value in return? It's not going to happen. So this is what I'm getting at. The whole title and premise of this video is about rewarding children that misbehave and that are disobedient. You should never reward disobedience. If you set down some ground rules and say, these are the rules that you follow in this house, these are the rules that you follow when you leave this house, then those are the rules. And if you don't follow these rules, if you break these guidelines and or these rules, this is the punishment. This is what's going to happen if you break the rules. And you need to stand on it, mothers, even fathers and grandparents. You need to stand it firmly. And you're doing your child a favor by doing so. But if your child gets in trouble, and you know your child, and you know your child is capable of, you know their personality. If they get in trouble outside of the home especially, and you get a report back from some agency or from the school or what have you, your child has done something, don't be so quick to jump to the side of the child when you know that that's possible true. Have a conversation with the child, ask them what happened, give them appropriate punishment. The thing that you established in the beginning, hopefully. But if you say you have 5 days and no television, no cell phone, no electronic devices, don't neg on it after 2 days because you feel sorry for the child because they're moping around their head and down, or even they're trying to persuade you to allow them to play with their electronic devices, their PlayStation 2 or 3 or what have you. Don't go back on your rules, because when that child recognizes that you're not keeping your, and they know that they're going to always try to persuade you to go against what you said because you really don't mean it. Either you're going to be a parent or you're going to be a child. You can't be both. So you're not supposed to be on the level of your child. I've heard it say this before. My daughter's my best friend. My son, my best friend. How in the world could you make a statement? No, they're your child. And as long as they are under the age of 19 or 18, treat them as such. You are the parent. Be the parent 100% all the way. Don't condescend, drop down to their level, because they'll never respect you. They will never respect you. That's what they really need. They really need you to guide them. Teach them how to navigate throughout life. Because if you don't give them those lessons, what are they going to do? What are they going to pull from if you give nothing to survive on? Do you follow what I'm saying? So if I punish a child and I said TV for 3 days, and you can't go over to your cousin's house this weekend, if the cousins call the house 2 weeks before and say,
so and so over to that way, and so they're standing in the background, the child that is looking at me because they know their cousin's on the phone. Am I going to change my mind from the punishment? No. It's fair to me and my principles to do, and it makes me a hypocrite. Either I stand firm or I'm not. And either they're going to learn the lesson or they are not. The lesson is not me going against what I said. If I gave my child a punishment, if you give your child a punishment, so be. Let it be. And let it play out until the end, until it's over. Your child will thank you down the road when they become an adult. Thank you, Mom, Dad, for staying on me. Because you made me the man or woman that I am today. If you didn't stay on top, I would have probably ended up in the street or in the juice system. Thank you. You will see this come to pass one day. But when you give no rules, where there's rules, there's chaos all of the time. Now, to go on, and I'm about to depart from the office. I just wanted to share that with you and make you aware, those of you that are new parents, maybe even older seasoned parents that have had some struggles with your children. Have your children possibly been in and out of the judicial system? They've been arrested or in juvenile. We call it juvenile. They teenagers, these those types of love your children. Only they're the most important when they're very young. So maybe I you know you hate things when you is what you put get out, but you get we have